The crystal towers of Xerion Prime gleamed under three suns as ships from across the galaxy descended toward the planet's surface. Admiral Lyra Moonwhisper stood on the bridge of her bioship, watching the arrivals with careful eyes. Her pointed ears twitched slightly as she observed the crude metal vessels of the younger races, mixing with the elegant living ships of her own people. The Galactic Council was meeting today, and she knew exactly why. The humans had become a problem. Lyra's ship pulsed gently around her as it landed in the designated area. The organic walls breathed with a slow rhythm that had comforted her people for thousands of years. She touched the smooth surface with one pale hand and felt the ship's contentment. Unlike the noisy mechanical vessels of other races, elven ships were alive and beautiful. She walked through the ship's corridors toward the exit. Her long silver hair flowed behind her like liquid starlight, and her blue uniform marked her as one of the Celestial Armada's highest commanders. Other elves bowed as she passed. They knew her reputation well. She had never lost a battle in 300 years of service. Outside the ship, the air of Xerion Prime tasted of ozone and crystal dust. Lyra joined the stream of delegates walking toward the great meeting hall. She saw the bulky forms of Draconian officers with their scales catching the light and the floating energy beings of the Xerion host race. Representatives from dozens of worlds moved together toward the same destination. The meeting hall rose like a mountain of pure crystal above them. Inside, thousands of seats arranged in careful circles awaited the delegates. Lyra found her place among the other elven representatives and settled herself with graceful movements. She looked around the vast space and felt satisfaction. This was how the galaxy should work. The old races in positions of honor and the young ones learning their place. A deep rumble filled the air as Commander Zara Vex entered the hall. The Draconian's massive form cast shadows across nearby delegates. Her scales were deep red with edges of gold, and her yellow eyes swept the room like a predator seeking prey. She wore the black armor of the Draconian military, and each step she took shook the crystal floor slightly. Zara took her seat among the other Draconian representatives, and her voice carried clearly across the hall when she spoke to her companions. "Today we end this human foolishness," she said. "They have forgotten their place in the galaxy." Near the back of the hall, almost hidden among delegates from minor worlds, sat Ambassador Kate Morrison. She wore the simple blue and white uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps and looked small compared to the beings around her. Her brown hair was pulled back in a practical style, and her green eyes watched everything with quiet attention. Beside Kate sat Dr. Lisa Park, Earth's leading expert on alien technology. Lisa's dark hair was streaked with early gray from years of intense study, and her tablet displayed streams of data about the various ships parked outside. She whispered something to Kate, and both human women looked concerned. The crystal dome above them rang like a bell, and all conversation stopped. A Xerion energy being materialized at the center of the hall. Its form shifted between solid and pure light as it spoke in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "The Galactic Council recognizes the matter of human expansion. The," Xerion announced, "Admiral Lyra Moonwhisper will present the case for intervention." Lyra rose smoothly and walked to the speaking platform. With a gesture, she activated the holographic display system. Images filled the air above the assembled delegates. The first showed human ships in battle with alien vessels. The human craft looked crude and angular compared to the flowing designs of other races. "Observe their primitive technology," Lyra said, her voice carrying the musical quality common to her people. "They still use kinetic projectiles and chemical rockets. Their ships are built of raw metal and powered by controlled explosions." Laughter rippled through the hall. The delegates from advanced civilizations found human technology amusing. Zara's deep chuckle was loudest of all. The next image showed human colonies on worlds that other races had claimed. "They expand without permission," Lyra continued. "They take what they want and ignore our laws. They have no respect for the order we have built over millennia." More images followed. Human miners stripping asteroids. Human traders refusing to pay proper tribute to established powers. Human explorers venturing into forbidden zones of space. "They are children playing with fire," said a delegate from the crystalline assembly. "Perhaps they need to be taught proper behavior." Zara stood, and her massive form dominated the platform. "The Draconian Empire volunteers to provide this education," she announced. A small demonstration of force should remind them of their proper place. The hall erupted in approving sounds from dozens of species. Ambassador Morrison tried to stand, but a Zerion energy field kept her in her seat. The host race did not want interruptions during the formal presentations. "The humans claim they want peace," Zara continued, "but they arm themselves like conquerors. They build weapons and train soldiers while speaking of friendship. Their ambassador sits among us, but her words mean nothing." Kate's face reddened, but she remained silent. Dr. Park's fingers moved quickly across her tablet as she recorded everything. Lyra returned to the platform and smiled at the assembled delegates. "The Elven people have observed human behavior for 50 Earth years," she said. "They are aggressive but weak, clever but not wise. They have learned to copy our technologies, but they do not understand what they have copied." She gestured, and new images appeared. These showed human attempts to build faster-than-light drives. Most of the ships in the images were clearly damaged or destroyed. "They fail more often than they succeed," Lyra noted. "Their science is built on guesswork and luck. They have no respect for the natural order of things." A delegate from the Hive Collective spoke through clicking sounds that translators converted to words. "What do you propose, Admiral?" "Simple correction," Lyra replied. "The Draconian Empire will send a fleet to human space, not to destroy but to demonstrate. When humans see real power, they will remember their place." The vote was swift and overwhelming. Only a few minor races abstained. The human delegation was not allowed to vote on matters concerning their own species. As the meeting ended, delegates began filing out of the hall. Lyra moved gracefully toward the exit, satisfied with the day's work. She had always believed that young races needed guidance from their betters. Zara approached her near the door. "How large a fleet do you think we need?" the Draconian asked. "Nothing. Too dramatic," Lyra replied. "Perhaps 100 ships. Maybe 200. Just enough to ensure they understand." "And if they resist?" Lyra's musical laugh rang through the air. "With what? Their metal toys and chemical rockets? The demonstration will be bloodless, Commander. Humans are not stupid enough to fight when they cannot win." Behind them, Kate Morrison and Dr. Park gathered their materials in silence. Kate's jaw was set in hard lines, and her green eyes burned with controlled anger. Lisa looked up from her tablet and leaned close to her companion. "Their energy signatures don't match," Lisa whispered. "The Elven and Draconian technologies. Something's wrong with their readings." Kate nodded slightly. "Send the data to General Cross, Priority Channel." As the humans left the hall, neither alien commander paid them any attention. In their minds, the matter was already settled. Earth would learn its place in the galaxy whether it wanted to or not. The crystal towers of Zerion Prime gleamed as ships began departing for their home worlds. War was coming to human space, and the galaxy expected it to be brief. The Draconian Grand Fleet continued its advance toward Earth, but now uncertainty traveled with them. In the vast emptiness between the stars, something was hunting them. Something that struck without warning and left no evidence behind. Admiral. Lyra felt her bioship's distress as its organic sensors detected wrongness in the void ahead. The living vessel had survived for centuries by recognizing threats that conventional instruments missed. Now it trembled with fear at something it could not name or understand. The humans had laughed at by the galaxy's greatest powers. Now those same powers were beginning to learn that Earth held secrets that could make even ancient empires afraid. Commander Vex stared at her tactical display in growing disbelief. In the past 6 hours, 5 more ships from her advance guard had simply vanished. No weapons fire, no explosions, no debris. One moment they were there, the next they were gone as if they had never existed. "Fleet Command is requesting another status report," her communications officer announced nervously. Vex's scaled hands clenched into fists. How could she explain what was happening when she did not understand it herself? "Tell them we have lost contact with 6 vessels due to unknown factors." Unknown factors. The words tasted bitter in her mouth. In 300 years of military service, she had never encountered anything like this. Draconian ships were the most powerful in the galaxy. They did not simply disappear. Aboard the Eternal Grace, Admiral Lyra watched the unfolding situation with growing alarm. Her bioship's organic sensors were detecting strange quantum fluctuations in the space around the Draconian fleet. The patterns made no sense according to known physics. "Sister," said Captain Ciliana from her sensor station, "the living components of our ship are becoming agitated. They sense something wrong in the void." Lyra moved to the organic interface panel and placed her pale hands on the pulsing surface. Through the bioship's nervous system, she could feel its fear. The vessel had encountered predators and hostile forces throughout its long life, but this was different. This was terror of something it could not comprehend. "Can you identify the source?" she asked. "Negative. The disturbance seems to come from everywhere and nowhere. Our sensors detect massive energy signatures that appear and disappear faster than our instruments can track." Deep in Earth's solar system, Dr. Maria Santos worked feverishly in her underground laboratory. Banks of quantum computers processed streams of data from sensors hidden throughout human space. The energy patterns she was recording should have been impossible according to conventional science. "Director Blake," she called through her communication system, "the phase variance is increasing. We're seeing dimensional distortions on a scale I've never measured before." Director Susan Blake's voice came back immediately. "Are the containment fields holding?" "For now. But if these readings are accurate, we're manipulating forces that could tear holes in space itself." "Understood. Continue monitoring. We're too far committed to stop now." Captain Helen Wright sat in the command chair of her deep space reconnaissance ship Shadow Walker. The vessel hung motionless in space far beyond the orbit of Pluto, its advanced sensors trained on the approaching Draconian fleet. Helen was a veteran of 20 years in Earth's deep space operations, and she had never seen anything like what was happening. "Captain," her sensor officer reported, "I'm reading massive gravitational anomalies around the enemy fleet. Space itself appears to be bending in ways that violate known physics." Helen studied the readings on her screen. "Are our people doing this?" "I believe so, ma'am. The distortions match theoretical models for dimensional fold technology, but the energy requirements should be impossible with current human capabilities." "Should be," Helen murmured, "but apparently are not." Empress Cythera stood on her command bridge, watching her fleet dissolve around her. In the past 12 hours, 47 ships had vanished without explanation. The formation that had once struck fear into the hearts of entire civilizations was falling apart as terror spread through the ranks. "Your Majesty," her fleet commander said quietly, "perhaps we should consider withdrawing until we understand what we're facing." Cythera's yellow eyes blazed with fury. "Withdraw? The Draconian Empire does not retreat from humans. There must be a logical explanation for these disappearances." But even as she spoke, another ship vanished from the fleet formation. The massive dreadnought Bone Crusher simply ceased to exist between one sensor sweep and the next. 2,000 Draconian warriors gone in an instant. "All ships," Cythera commanded. "Close formation. Maximum shields. Activate all defensive systems." The remaining vessels moved closer together, their shields overlapping in a protective shell of energy. But the precautions proved useless. Ships continued to vanish from the center of the formation just as easily as from the edges. On her experimental stealth frigate, Captain Maya Rodriguez monitored the quantum resonance patterns that surrounded her ship. The silent thunder existed, in a state between normal space and another dimension entirely. From this pocket of altered reality, her crew could strike at targets in normal space while remaining completely undetectable. "Target the command ship," she ordered. "It's time to send a message." Her weapons officer, Lieutenant Carol Reed, worked carefully at her controls. The dimensional phase cannon required precise calculations to function properly. A mistake could tear their own ship apart or strand them permanently between dimensions. "Firing solution locked," Carol reported. "Ready to engage. Fire." The weapon that struck Empress Cythera's flagship was unlike anything in the known galaxy. Instead of destroying the massive vessel, it simply removed it from normal spacetime. The Dominion Eternal, with its crew of 50,000 Draconians, vanished into a dimensional pocket where time moved differently and space followed alien rules. Admiral Lyra felt her bioship scream in terror as the quantum distortions peaked around the disappearing fleet. The living vessel's organic components had evolved over millions of years to detect threats, but this was beyond their comprehension. Something was rewriting the fundamental laws of physics in the space around them. All ships, she commanded. Retreat to minimum safe distance. Do not approach the distortion field. Her fleet of elven bioships backed away from the chaos, their organic hulls shuddering with fear. Captain Ciliana's younger sister Ailareth commanded one of the scout vessels, and her report was filled with awe and terror. Admiral, I'm detecting energy patterns that match theoretical models for extra-dimensional manipulation. If these readings are correct, the humans have developed technology that operates outside normal space-time. That's impossible, Lyra replied. Such technology would require understanding of physics that even we have not achieved. Nevertheless, the evidence is before us. The Draconian fleet is not being destroyed. It's being moved somewhere else entirely. The hours passed. The impossible became undeniable. The mighty Draconian Grand Fleet, 200 ships carrying 500,000 of the galaxy's most feared warriors, had vanished without a trace. No wreckage, no energy signatures, no evidence they had ever existed except for the recorded communications that suddenly ended mid-transmission. In the hidden command center beneath Earth, General Nina Cross watched the tactical displays with grim satisfaction. Operation Phantom had succeeded beyond their most optimistic projections. The enemy fleet was neutralized and humanity's secret was still safe. Phase 1 complete, she reported to the assembled staff. All Draconian vessels have been successfully phase-shifted into dimensional storage. Casualties? Asked Colonel Beth Morris. None on our side. Enemy forces are alive but contained in stable dimensional pockets. They can be returned to normal. Space when we choose. Dr. Santos looked up from her quantum computers with concern written across her face. General, the energy expenditure was enormous. We've depleted 60% of our dimensional generators. If we face another fleet this size, we may not have the power reserves to repeat this operation. Nina nodded gravely. Then we had better hope the galaxy learns its lesson from this demonstration. Across the galaxy, the news spread like wildfire. The Draconian Grand Fleet, the most powerful military force in known space, had simply vanished while approaching Earth. Communication networks buzzed with theories and speculation. Some claimed the humans had made a deal with extra-dimensional entities. Others suggested Earth had been secretly developing advanced technology for centuries. On Xerion Prime, the Galactic Council convened in emergency session. The crystal halls, that had recently echoed with laughter at human primitive technology, now hummed with nervous energy. Delegates who had dismissed Earth as insignificant now whispered fearfully about human capabilities. Ambassador Kate Morrison sat in her assigned seat and watched the proceedings with carefully controlled expression. Her green eyes gave away nothing of what she knew or what Earth might do next. Beside her, Dr. Lisa Park continued recording energy readings that defied conventional science. High Priestess Melania Starlight, eldest of the elven spiritual leaders, rose slowly from her seat. Her ancient voice carried clearly across the vast chamber as she spoke words that chilled every delegate present. The Draconian Grand Fleet moved through space like a storm of metal and fire. 200 massive warships advanced in perfect formation toward the human territories. Each vessel stretched for kilometers and bristled with weapons that could crack planets. At the center of the fleet, the flagship Dominion Eternal carried Empress Sathara herself. The Empress stood on her command bridge watching the stars ahead. Her ancient scales were black as space, with veins of silver that marked her age and power. She had ruled the Draconian Empire for 800 years and crushed dozens of rebellious species. These humans would be no different. How long until we reach their outer colonies? She asked her fleet commander. 16 hours, Your Majesty, replied General Kane Shaw, a human name she had taken after conquering his birth world decades ago. Our scouts report human ships fleeing before us. Cythera's laugh was like grinding stone. Of course they flee. They know what comes for them. 3 days behind the Draconian fleet, Admiral Lyra watched their progress from her bioship Eternal. Grace. The living vessel pulsed with nervous energy as its organic sensors detected the massive force ahead. Lyra had brought 20 elven ships to observe the coming lesson. Her people wanted to see how quickly the humans would surrender. Their formation is impressive. said Captain Ciliana Starweaver from her position at the sensor station. The younger elf had bright golden hair and wore the green uniform of the Scout Corps. I count exactly 200 ships maintaining perfect spacing. Lyra nodded approvingly. The Draconians may be brutal, but they are disciplined. This demonstration should be quite effective. On the bridge of the human patrol vessel Defiant, Lieutenant Amy Foster stared at her instruments with growing concern. The ship was small compared to the alien vessels, but fast and well-equipped with the latest human technology. Amy was young for her rank, with red hair and freckles that made her look even younger than her 25 years. "Captain," she called, to the ship's commander. "I'm reading strange energy patterns from some of those Draconian vessels." Captain Ross turned from his position near the main viewer. He was a veteran officer with gray hair and calm blue eyes. "What kind of patterns, Lieutenant?" "Hard to say, sir. It's like they're not all using the same power systems. Some of the readings don't match Draconian technology profiles." Ross frowned. "Run a full sensor sweep. Record everything." Deep in Earth's solar system, General Nina Cross stood in the command center buried beneath the Rocky Mountains. Banks of screens showed ship positions throughout human space. Her short brown hair was touched with gray, and her brown eyes held the steady gaze of someone who had seen too much war. "Status report," she ordered. "Draconian fleet continues advancing," replied her aide, Colonel Beth Morris. "ETA to Sol system is 48 hours at current speed." "And our deployments? All ships are in position according to Protocol 7. Captain Rodriguez reports ready status from the Silent Thunder." Nina nodded. Protocol 7 was not in any official manual. Most of the fleet commanders did not even know it existed. She touched the communication panel on her desk. "Maya, are you ready?" Captain Maya Rodriguez answered from the bridge of her experimental stealth frigate. The ship hung invisible in space near Jupiter, its hull covered in technology that bent light and sensor beams around it. Maya was a small woman with dark hair and intense brown eyes. She had volunteered for the most dangerous assignment in human space. "Ready as we'll ever be, General. My crew knows what to do." "Good luck, Maya. Begin Phase 1 when the enemy reaches the marker." As the Draconian fleet crossed into the outer edge of the Sol system, Empress Scythera opened a communication channel that reached across all of human space. Her massive form filled screens on every human world and ship. "Humans of Earth," her voice boomed. "I am Empress Scythera of the Draconian Empire. You have forgotten your place in the galaxy. You expand without permission. You trade without tribute. You explore without respect for your betters." The transmission continued as human civilians watched from their homes and soldiers listened from their battle stations. "I have come to remind you of the natural order. You will cease your unauthorized expansion. You will pay proper tribute to the established powers. You will return to your birth system and remain there." On the human colony world of New Boston, families gathered around communication screens in their homes. The images of the approaching fleet were terrifying. Ships larger than their entire cities advanced with weapons that could turn worlds to glass. "The alternative is simple," Scythera continued. "Refuse these reasonable demands and face the consequences. My fleet carries enough firepower to sterilize every human world. Choose wisely." The transmission ended, and space fell silent, except for the steady advance of the Draconian ships. On Earth, President Susan Blake prepared humanity's response. She was a tall woman with silver hair and blue eyes that had seen her through decades of political battles. This message would be the most important of her career. The response from Earth was broadcast on all channels 12 hours later. President Blake appeared on screen wearing the simple blue suit of her office. Behind her stood the flags of all human worlds. "Empress Scythera," she said in a calm voice. "We have received your demands. After careful consideration, we respectfully decline." The message was less than 30 seconds long, but it sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Every monitoring station picked up the transmission. The humans were refusing to surrender. On the Eternal Grace, Admiral Lyra felt her bioship shudder with surprise. The living vessel's organic components could sense her emotional state, and they shared her amazement. "They cannot be serious," said Captain Starweaver. "Do they not understand the size of the force approaching them?" "Perhaps they are hoping for rescue," Lyra replied. "Some humans still believe other races will come to their aid." But no rescue. Fleets appeared. The galaxy watched and waited to see how quickly the humans would change their minds when the shooting started. Empress Cythera received the human response while reviewing fleet positions with her staff. Her yellow eyes blazed with fury and her claws extended involuntarily. No species had ever refused her demands so casually. "Increase speed," she ordered. "I want to reach their homeworld in 18 hours. Prepare the bombardment systems." "Yes, Your Majesty," replied her fleet commander. "Shall we target military installations first?" "Target everything," Cythera snarled. "Cities, farms, factories. I want them to see the price of defiance." As the Draconian fleet accelerated toward Earth, the first strange reports began arriving. Scout ships at the front of the formation reported minor technical difficulties. Navigation systems flickered, communication arrays developed static. Power readings fluctuated for no apparent reason. Commander Vex, sister to Zara and leader of the advance guard, tried to maintain order among her 12 ships. She was smaller than most Draconians, but known for her tactical skills and steady nerves. "Engineering reports all systems normal," her aide informed her. "But 3 ships are reporting intermittent sensor ghosts." Ghosts? Contacts that appear and disappear. Always at the edge of sensor range, always too fast to track. Vex frowned. Human ships were not known for their speed or stealth capabilities. "Probably sensor echoes from our own fleet. Maintain formation and continue advance." But the problems grew worse as they approached the inner system. Ships began losing contact with fleet command for minutes at a time. Weapons systems developed mysterious glitches. Most disturbing of all, several vessels reported strange readings from empty space. On the bridge of the Silent Thunder, Captain Rodriguez watched her instruments with fierce concentration. The stealth frigate moved through space like a ghost, its advanced systems making it nearly impossible to detect. Around her, a crew of 30 specialists monitored systems that officially did not exist. "Target acquired," reported her weapons officer, Lieutenant Carol Reed. "Draconian scout ship bearing 27 Mark IV. Range, 50,000 kilometers, and closing." Maya smiled grimly. "Fire when ready." The weapon that struck the Draconian scout ship was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. There was no explosion, no flash of energy, no debris field. The massive warship simply disappeared as if it had never existed at all. Commander Vex watched in horror as one of her vessels vanished from her sensors. No distress signal, no final transmission, no trace of what had happened. The ship was there one moment and gone the next. "All ships report status," she ordered. 11 ships responded. The 12th had simply ceased to exist. As word of the disappearance reached the main fleet, Empress Cythera felt the first stirring of unease. In 800 years of conquest, she had never seen anything like this. Ships could be destroyed, disabled, or captured. They did not simply vanish. "Increase sensor sweeps," she commanded. "Find what took that ship." But the sensors found nothing, except empty space and distant stars. Whatever had destroyed the scout vessel had left no trace of its presence. "In our oldest prophecies," she said, "it is written that a young race would arise and change the nature of reality itself. We believed those prophecies referred to myth and legend. Perhaps we were wrong." The silence that followed her words was broken only by the crystalline chiming of Zerion energy beings as they flickered with nervous energy. The galaxy's oldest and most powerful civilizations had just learned that their assumptions about the universe might be completely wrong. Somewhere, in the depths of space, in dimensions that existed alongside but separate from normal reality, 200 Draconian warships drifted in temporal suspension. Their crews were alive but unaware that time was passing differently around them. They waited unknowingly for the day when humanity would decide their fate. The beings who had laughed at Earth now faced a terrifying truth. The small blue world they had dismissed held secrets that could make the impossible real. The question was no longer whether humans deserved a place among the galactic powers, but whether the galaxy was prepared for what humanity might become. The galaxy had never known such fear. News networks across thousands of worlds broadcast the same impossible story. The Draconian Grand Fleet, 200 ships and 500,000 warriors, had vanished without a trace while approaching Earth. No wreckage, no distress signals, no Explanation that made sense according to known science. Agent Claire Thompson sat in a small cafe on the neutral trading station Harmony Point, waiting for her contact. Claire looked like an ordinary human trader with brown hair and plain clothes, but she was actually one of Earth's most skilled intelligence operatives. Today, she was meeting with someone who might have answers about what the galaxy was thinking. Across the cafe, a figure in a hooded cloak approached her table. The hood fell back to reveal the delicate features of a young elf. Captain Elareth Moonwhisper, sister to Admiral Lyra, sat down carefully and kept her voice low. "My people are frightened," Alareth said without greeting. "The bioships refuse to enter human space. They sense something wrong with reality itself in that region." Claire sipped her coffee calmly. "What do your sensors tell you?" "Quantum distortions unlike anything in our databases. Energy patterns that suggest manipulation of space-time itself. My sister believes humans have developed extra-dimensional technology." "And what do you believe?" Alareth's silver eyes were troubled. "I believe the galaxy has underestimated your species for too long. The question is what you intend to do with whatever power you've discovered." On the Draconian homeworld of Sithak, Regent Thys paced the throne room with barely controlled fury. She was Empress Cythera's daughter, smaller than her mother but with the same fierce intelligence and golden scales that marked royal blood. The disappearance of the Grand Fleet had left the Empire in chaos. "What do our scientists say?" she demanded of her advisors. "The quantum physicists believe the fleet was not destroyed but displaced," replied her chief science advisor. "Theoretical models suggest the ships may exist in a parallel dimension or temporal fold. Can we retrieve them? Not with current technology. The energy requirements would be beyond our capabilities." Thys stopped pacing and stared out the massive windows at her capital city. Millions of Draconians looked to her for leadership in this crisis. For the first time in their species' history, they faced an enemy they could not understand or defeat through conventional means. On Earth, young engineer Brooke Davis worked frantically in a secure laboratory beneath the Swiss Alps. She was barely 25 years old with short blonde hair and bright blue eyes, but her understanding of quantum mechanics was already legendary. The technology she was studying should not have existed for another 1,000 years of human development. "Director Blake," she called through the communication system. "I've identified the core principle behind the dimensional phase drives. It's not just moving objects out of normal space. We're actually creating stable pocket dimensions that exist parallel to our own reality." Director Blake's voice came back immediately. "How stable are these pockets?" "Theoretically permanent. The energy expenditure is enormous initially, but once established, the pocket dimensions are self-sustaining. We could store entire fleets indefinitely." "And retrieval?" "Possible, but complex. We would need to reverse the quantum field polarities and channel massive amounts of energy through the dimensional gateway. The good news is that time moves differently in the pocket dimensions. To the stored objects, only minutes would have passed even if we wait years to retrieve them." High Priestess Melania Starlight stood in the sacred grove on the elven homeworld of Ethermore. Ancient trees that had grown for 10,000 years whispered secrets in the wind, and she listened with the patience of centuries. As the oldest living elf, she remembered prophecies that others had forgotten. The wind brought her visions of the past and glimpses of possible futures. She saw the rise and fall of civilizations, the birth and death of stars and something else. A species young by galactic standards but touched by destiny in ways that even the ancients had not foreseen. "The humans are not what they appear," she whispered to the trees. "They carry within them the seeds of transformation that will change everything." On the crystal world of Xerion Prime, Ambassador Kess worked desperately to prevent galactic war, the energy being flickered between solid and transparent forms as stress affected its ability to maintain coherent shape. As a representative of one of the galaxy's most peaceful species, Kess understood the delicate balance that kept thousands of worlds from destroying each other. "The fear is spreading," Kess reported to the emergency council session. 17 species have begun mobilizing their fleets. They believe Earth represents an existential threat to galactic civilization. "What do the humans say?" asked a delegate from the aquatic collective. "Nothing. They refuse all requests for explanation or demonstration of their capabilities. Ambassador, Morrison will only say that Earth acted in self-defense. Self-defense? The delegates' gills fluttered with agitation. They made an entire fleet disappear. Perhaps that is exactly why we should be seeking communication rather than confrontation, Kess suggested. Dr. Lisa Park analyzed data streams in her laboratory aboard the human research vessel Discovery. The ship orbited Earth's moon while she processed information from sensors that had been watching the Draconian fleet's approach. What she was finding challenged everything the galaxy thought it knew about physics. The quantum signatures are impossible, she muttered to herself. The energy requirements alone should have torn holes in space-time, but somehow the fields remained stable. Her assistant, a young physicist named Janet Miller, looked up from her own terminal. Dr. Park, I think I understand how they did it. Look at these power distribution patterns. Lisa studied the data Janet had compiled. The energy flows showed a network of hidden installations throughout the solar system, each one contributing to a massive field generator that could manipulate the fundamental forces of reality. My God, Lisa whispered. They've been building this for decades. The entire solar system is one enormous dimensional manipulation device. Admiral Lyra stood before the Elven High Council in the Great Crystal Chamber on Ethermoor. The bioship that had carried her home still trembled from its encounter with the quantum distortions around Earth. She had never seen her people so shaken by any threat. Honored counselors, she began, we must reconsider our entire understanding of human capabilities. What I witnessed was not simply advanced technology, it was a fundamental alteration of reality itself. You speak of impossibilities, said Counselor Valandris, an ancient elf whose memories spanned 3 millennia. No species develop such capabilities without centuries of gradual advancement. Yet the evidence is undeniable. The Draconian fleet exists somewhere outside normal space-time. The humans achieved this with no apparent effort or strain on their resources. What do you recommend? Lyra's silver eyes reflected the crystal light as she considered her words carefully. We must approach them as equals, not as primitives to be educated. Whatever they have become, they are no longer the simple species we once dismissed. In the hidden command center beneath Earth, Director Susan Blake met with the planet's most senior officials. President Blake, General Cross, Dr. Santos, and a dozen others who knew the full truth about humanity's secret development sat around a table that had been built to withstand nuclear war. Status report, President Blake requested. All Draconian vessels remain in stable dimensional storage, reported Dr. Santos. Power consumption has leveled off, and we have sufficient reserves for defensive operations if needed. What about galactic reaction? General Cross activated a holographic display showing ship movements throughout known space. 17 major fleets are mobilizing. The Crystalline Assembly has declared a state of emergency. Even our traditional allies are requesting clarification of our capabilities. Recommendations? We need to demonstrate that we're not a threat, while making it clear that attacking us would be futile, Director Blake suggested. Perhaps it's time for limited disclosure. And if they demand the return of the Draconian fleet? That depends on whether the Draconians are willing to negotiate when they return. Empress Sithara was planning to bombard our civilian populations. Her intentions were clear. Captain Helen Wright's reconnaissance ship Shadow Walker detected massive fleet movements throughout the galaxy as species that had been enemies for millennia began forming temporary alliances against the perceived human threat. Her deep space sensors picked up communication traffic that painted a clear picture of galactic opinion. They're terrified, she reported to Earth Command. I'm intercepting transmissions from over 30 species. They're all asking the same questions. How? Did humans develop dimensional technology? What else are we hiding? Are we planning to conquer the galaxy? And what are you telling them? General Cross asked. Nothing. My orders are to observe and report. But Helen, the galaxy is mobilizing against us. If we don't find a way to defuse this situation, we could be facing a war against everyone. On the trading station, Harmony Point, Agent Claire Thompson received an encrypted message from Earth Command. Her orders were simple but dangerous. Make contact with moderate elements among the alien powers and begin laying groundwork for negotiations. She looked across the cafe at Elareth, who was still waiting for answers to questions that could determine the fate of civilizations. You're Sister wants to know what humans intend to do with our new capabilities, Claire said carefully. The answer is simple. We intend to survive. Survival often requires making others feel safe, Alareth replied. Fear makes people do terrible things. Then perhaps it's time for the galaxy to learn that humans prefer peace to war, cooperation to conquest. But we will not be victims again. As the conversation continued in quiet tones, neither woman knew that their words were being recorded by agents from 6 different species. The hunt for truth about human capabilities had become a race against time, with the future of galactic civilization hanging in the balance. Somewhere in dimensions that existed alongside normal space, 200 Draconian warships waited in temporal suspension while their crews remained unaware that their fate was being decided by powers they had never imagined. The galaxy that had once laughed at Earth now faced the possibility that humanity had become something far beyond their understanding or control. The Great Assembly Hall on Zerion Prime had never hosted such a gathering. Representatives from every major species in the galaxy filled the crystal chamber, their voices creating a constant buzz of nervous conversation. For the first time in galactic history, they had come together not to discuss trade or territory, but to address what many believed was an existential threat to their entire civilization. Director Susan Blake walked through the entrance with calm dignity, flanked by Ambassador Kate Morrison and Dr. Lisa Park. The 3 human women wore simple blue uniforms that seemed almost primitive compared to the elaborate dress of other delegates. But every eye in the vast chamber followed their movement as they took their seats in the center of the hall. Admiral Lyra watched from the elven section, her silver hair catching the crystal light as she studied the human delegation. Beside her, Captain Alareth leaned forward with obvious curiosity. The younger elf had been changed by her conversations with human agents and no longer shared her people's casual dismissal of Earth's capabilities. They seem so ordinary, Alareth whispered. How can such unremarkable beings wield power that terrifies entire civilizations? Perhaps, Lyra replied thoughtfully. That is exactly why we underestimated them. Regent Thys sat in the Draconian section, her golden scales dulled with worry and exhaustion. The disappearance of her mother and the Grand Fleet had thrown the Empire into chaos. Faction leaders whispered of civil war, while her military commanders demanded immediate retaliation against Earth. Only her desperate hope of recovering the lost fleet kept her from ordering a full-scale assault on human space. The Zerion host, being materialized at the center of the hall, its energy form flickering with nervous patterns as it addressed the assembly. This emergency session recognizes Director Susan Blake of Earth. The floor is yours, Director. Susan stood and walked to the speaking platform with steady steps. She was a tall woman with silver hair and blue eyes that had looked into the deepest secrets of human science. Today she would reveal truths that would change the galaxy forever. Honored delegates, she began in a voice that carried clearly through the vast chamber. 50 years ago, human scientists made a discovery while investigating quantum anomalies near Jupiter. We found something that changed our understanding of reality itself. A holographic display materialized above the platform showing the gas giant's turbulent surface. The anomalies led us to develop what we call dimensional fold technology. Unlike your faster-than-light drives that move through normal space, our ships learned to step outside reality entirely. Gasps and concerned murmurs rippled through the assembly. Several delegates activated personal recording devices while others began rapid conversations with their staff. The missing Draconian fleet has not been destroyed, Susan continued. It exists in stable dimensional pockets where time moves differently than in normal space. The crews are alive and unharmed, though unaware that external time has passed. Regent Thys rose from her seat, her voice carrying desperate hope. Can they be returned? Yes, Susan replied simply. But that depends on whether the Draconian Empire is prepared to negotiate rather than conquer. Commander Jack Hayes materialized beside the platform, his form shimmering as he phased back into normal space from a dimensional fold. The tall man with graying hair wore the black uniform of Earth's dimensional fleet operations. His sudden appearance sent shockwaves through the assembly as delegates realized they were witnessing impossible technology in action. For the past 30 years, Jack announced, human dimensional fleets have been operating throughout the galaxy. We have observed wars, prevented disasters, and protected civilian populations from threats they never knew existed. The holographic display changed to show images of human ships intervening in conflicts across known space. A dimensional frigate, pulling damaged civilian vessels out of a gravity well before their rescue could arrive. Human engineers in environmental suits repairing critical systems on alien space stations. Dimensional scouts providing early warning of asteroid impacts to planets whose own detection systems had failed. "We have been your guardians without your knowledge," Susan explained. "Not because we sought control, but because we learned that great power brings great responsibility." Oracle Celestine rose slowly from the elven section. The ancient seer was so old that her silver hair had turned white as starlight, and her eyes held the wisdom of millennia. When she spoke, her voice carried the authority of someone who had witnessed the rise and fall of entire civilizations. "In our oldest prophecies," she said, "it is written that a young race would arise and transform the nature of existence itself. We believed this referred to myth and legend. But prophecy has become reality before our eyes." "What does this mean for the galaxy?" asked Ambassador Kess, the Xerion energy being flickering with patterns of concern. Susan activated new displays showing dimensional parasites that existed in the spaces between realities. The creatures were vast and hungry, feeding on the energy of normal space. 6 months ago, our sensors detected an invasion from extra-dimensional predators. These entities consume entire star systems and leave nothing but empty void behind. The assembly fell silent as delegates studied the horrifying images. The parasites looked like living shadows with tentacles that could wrap around planets. The Draconian fleet was carrying dimensional parasites without their knowledge, Susan continued. The entities had attached themselves to the ship's hulls and were planning to use the fleet as a delivery system to Earth's solar system. By removing the fleet from normal space, we prevented an invasion that would have consumed dozens of worlds. Regent Thiss stared at the images in shock. "My mother's fleet was infected? The parasites are attracted to aggressive emotional states," Dr. Lisa Park explained as she joined the group on the platform. "Military fleets operating under orders to destroy and conquer become ideal hosts for these entities. This is why we developed our defensive capabilities," Susan added. "Not to conquer or control, but to protect. The galaxy faces threats that conventional weapons cannot fight." Admiral Lyra stood and addressed the assembly. "If this is true, why did you not warn us?" "Would you have believed us?" Susan asked gently. 6 months ago, this assembly voted to allow the Draconian Empire to educate humanity about our place in the galaxy. You dismissed us as primitive children playing with stolen technology. "Because we did not understand," Lyra admitted. "We judged you by our own limitations rather than recognizing your unique capabilities. The question now," Susan continued, "is whether the galaxy is prepared to work together against threats that endanger all of us. The dimensional parasites are only the beginning. Our deep space sensors have detected other entities moving between realities. Some are hostile, others are simply alien beyond our comprehension." Commander Hayes activated his dimensional systems again, partially phasing out of normal space so that his form became translucent. "Human technology allows us to fight these entities on their own terms, but we cannot protect the entire galaxy alone." "What are you proposing?" asked the delegate from the Crystalline Assembly. "Partnership," Susan replied. "Shared knowledge, cooperative defense, and mutual respect. Earth offers to train selected individuals from each species in dimensional technology. In return, we ask for recognition as equals and support in protecting civilian populations throughout the galaxy." Regent Thice stepped forward. "And my mother's fleet?" "Will be returned immediately as a gesture of good faith," Susan announced. "Commander Hayes will retrieve the first wave of ships within the hour." Jack saluted and stepped sideways out of reality, his form vanishing completely as he entered the dimensional fold. Moments later, alarms began sounding throughout Xerion Prime's orbital space as massive Draconian warships materialized from nowhere. The first ship to appear was a destroyer whose crew had been in the middle of a routine patrol when they vanished. The captain's voice came over communication channels, confused but unharmed. "Fleet Command, this is Captain Vex. We experienced some kind of spatial distortion. What is our status?" "You have been missing for 72 hours, Regent Thys replied, her voice thick with emotion. "How much time passed for you?" "Missing? We were only in the distortion field for a few minutes." As more ships continued materializing, each crew reporting the same experience, the reality of human capabilities became undeniable. They had stored an entire fleet in pocket dimensions where time moved differently, keeping the crews alive and unharmed while the galaxy searched for answers. Ambassador Kate Morrison stepped forward for the first time during the session. "The choice is yours," she said to the assembled delegates. "We can work together to face the challenges ahead, or you can continue to view Earth as a threat. But understand this: humanity will not be conquered, enslaved, or destroyed. We have moved beyond such possibilities. What guarantee do we have that humans will not use this technology for conquest?" asked the delegate from the Hive Collective. "The same guarantee we have had for 50 years, Susan replied. "If we wanted to conquer the galaxy, we would have done so already. Instead, we have spent decades protecting lives and preventing disasters without seeking credit or recognition." Oracle Celestine spoke again, her ancient voice carrying absolute authority. "The prophecies are clear. This species carries within them the potential to transform existence itself. They will either become the galaxy's salvation or its destruction, depending on how we choose to treat them. Then let us choose wisely," said Admiral Lyra. She stood and formally bowed to the human delegation, a gesture of respect that sent shockwaves through the elven section. "On behalf of the Celestial Armada, I offer alliance and friendship to the people of Earth." One by one, other delegates began standing and offering similar commitments. The Crystalline Assembly, the Aquatic Collective, even the Militant Hive Collective expressed willingness to explore cooperation rather than confrontation. Regent Thys was among the last to speak. "The Draconian Empire formally apologizes for our aggression and requests negotiation for a mutual defense pact." Susan smiled, and for the first time since entering the chamber, she looked truly relaxed. "Then let us begin building a future that benefits everyone." As the session ended and delegates began filing out to communicate with their home governments, the galaxy knew that everything had changed. The species that had once been dismissed as primitive had revealed themselves as guardians, with power beyond imagination. Empress Cythera's flagship materialized in Draconian space 12 hours later. The ancient ruler emerged from her temporal suspension, confused but unharmed, to find her daughter negotiating humanity's entry into the Galactic Council as an equal member. The beings who had laughed at Earth now worked together with human scientists to develop defenses against extra-dimensional threats. The small blue world that had once seemed insignificant had become the center of a new age of cooperation and mutual protection. And in the depths of space between dimensions, ancient entities that had planned to consume the galaxy retreated to find easier prey. They had learned, as others before them, that humanity protected what it chose to protect with determination that transformed the impossible into inevitable reality.